Welcome to another episode of CastAsCastCan. I am your host, Mr. Marvelous. And of course, I'm joined by the notorious one-star Caden.
That's right, the one-star professional wrestling, Caden Felix here with you on Cast as Cast Can, where we cast the questions and catch the truth with our auspicious, autistic analysis of professional wrestling with an IQ unparalleled in all of professional wrestling. And today we're going to be applying it in a really unprecedented format as journalists, aren't we, Runyon?
We got a jam-packed episode today. This probably be our longest episode ever. And
Absolutely.
I mean, but let's just recap. We came off the reviews of Barrie Wrestling, and we definitely got a lot of attention, but nothing direct, if you know what I mean. Like you could see the videos that we posted got a lot of hits, and I mean, in most
The
cases, there
videos we
was more
got,
hits.
the videos we posted, they got more hits. The reviews got more hits than the matches in question for the vast majority of them. And I would consider them a success, but they did not compare to some of the stuff we did earlier on with our initial episodes.
Well, I think there wasn't anything controversial that we talked about. We just kind of talked about things that people already knew.
The
It
only
seems like.
controversy was that our take on Barrie Wrestling, which is perceived however it's perceived, and we did get more success again than the vast majority of their videos. And if you want to learn more about that and go into detail about that, you can watch those reviews.
Yeah, so we did a lot of digging, and we're gonna go through it all, very similar to our first controversy that we went through.
And unlike that first controversy, that brown stain, we've been throwing shit against the wall to see what stains and see what doesn't. And maybe those reviews didn't, but today we don't have a brown stain. We have a black stain that we're going to be eventually talking about potentially here in the main event of today's episode.
Before we move on, though, I just want to say it would have been nice if Barry Wrestling thanked us for giving them the rub. I mean, our videos clearly did better, but let's move on to the
And
top
gave
of the
them
program.
some additional hits and some additional spikes in their viewership
Yes, that too.
on certain moments of those videos that we particularly talked about.
But like we said, it wasn't very controversial what we talked about. We laid everything out. We gave our opinions, and I
But
think
let's
there
talk
wasn't
about
really
another
much
top
disagreement. But
tier promotion here. Isn't that what we're gonna do now? So let's
yeah,
get
so at
to
the
it. And
top of the
you know
program,
more about that than me.
we're moving on to
Uh-huh.
Destiny Wrestling, and the interesting thing with Destiny Wrestling is that they've been I don't know. Are they undecided on where they want to run shows, or is it just they want to try and run shows everywhere?
We'll
They
see how.
they ran a show in Oshawa with Dr. Mask,
Uh-huh.
which you were actually at. So
Yeah.
you,
The outdoor event is
so you,
sponsored by the city.
so you know a
Absolutely,
little
yeah.
bit of it, and they they then said they were going to run a show at Super Kicked,
Uh-huh.
which is interesting because it comes off the
At
heels.
Superkick. So that does that mean at the Great Hall or at Superkick Studios or their
I would double
dojo or
check.
whatever?
I just saw Super Kicked. I double check that, but it definitely
Because
said Super
obviously they have
Kicked.
two venues. They have their
But
dojo where they've run some small shows that they haven't even really advertised, and then they run at the Great Hall.
right, but the interesting thing was this comes off the heels of them running at Chris Thorne's CWF in St. Catharines,
Oh, interesting.
and
Okay.
yeah,
So was
so
that a show in conjunction with CWF, or was it just them
well, see,
honorarily
I
participating?
think this is where I get confused at least because I don't really know. I think it's a Destiny show at CWF, but they
Okay.
don't mention CWF and they book some
That
other
seems
guys.
off brand for what Iceman established for Destiny. Because to me, I remember Destiny, the Iceman, who's now working for TNA, right?
Yeah,
Doing a great job as a
George.
manager there. George the Iceman. The way he established Destiny, he comes from a background of nightclubs, and he definitely executed a nightclub vibe of a top nightclub of exclusivity for Destiny Wrestling when he was bringing it up at Battle Arts. It seemed like exclusive. It seemed like the place everyone wanted to be, just like the club that everyone wanted to be, that he would be promoting as a club promoter. And now, since it's been taken over by new management, it seemed like that's no longer the case. What say you, Runyon?
George definitely had a grasp on branding and the importance of it, but the further to that was the show was the Destiny show at was that with Dr. Mask or was it just at his place in Oshawa?
Well, to my understanding, there was a bot show by the city, and they
Okay.
required a certain amount of hours and a certain amount of shows of wrestling throughout the day. And for whatever reason, he decided to split it between himself and Destiny. So there was a certain amount of
Okay.
the event provided by Destiny and a certain amount of the event
So
provided by
would
Dr. Mask.
you, since you were there, would you classify it as a success, just in terms of people or the wrestlers that wrestled, the matches, etc.?
Well, whenever I do a show like that, what I classify as the barometer of success is whether the whoever bought the show is happy and whether they're bringing us back next year. And all I can say to you to answer your question, I think this will say it all, is that next year Dr. Mask and Pro Wrestling Eclipse will be back.
I would say it comes down to money, and it comes down to whether it was a financial success. After all, this is a business. So if it was a bot show, it's hard to lose money on a bot show because then it's like you just spent more than the money that you're getting up front. There there should
I
be
can tell
some
you I was the locker room manager for the Dr. Mask Eclipse show, and I run a tight ship, as you probably know. Even when it's not my ship, I make sure it's tight when I'm there. Can you attest to that?
oh, for sure.
And I did that for Dr. Mask, and the city was very happy with what myself and Dr. Mask provided, and we'll be there again next year to provide something even better.
The CWF show that Destiny ran was definitely not a success because
Okay.
I mean
What makes you say
they
that?
only had, well, they only had 12 people there.
Okay.
I,
Well, that's got to
and
be a record for Destiny.
a record
Not a
low
good
for
one.
sure, and definitely way off any of George Iceman's lows.
Absolutely.
But okay, so there was obviously an issue with it with Dr. Masks, and there was obviously an issue with CWF. So Emilio comes back to Super Kick, and he announces it that he's going to run it Super Kicked, and then he
Yes.
changes it to Battle Arts, and it's
Which means Don Kolov Arena.
Don Kolov Arena, of course. It seems like there's a pattern here of lack of success and some other outstanding issues where
Well,
the
it seems
show's
to
not
me it's
successful.
quite obvious. It seems to me it's quite obvious that since the new management took over at Destiny, it has deteriorated, and it's deteriorating in many regards. And with that deterioration comes all of these attempts to throw things against the wall and see if they leave a brown stain and something that they can attach themselves to. And it seems like at this stage, Destiny is grasping for straws. What say you, Runyon?
Um, I think we'd have to ask the question to Emilio because I don't know. Like
That's
they're
as a viewer, as somebody sitting online and doom scrolling through all of this, is that the perception you're led to? Because based on everything I know about this is what you've told me and shown me right now. And that's the perception I'm getting. So maybe you have a better insight, and I'd like to ask you about that.
there's definitely, like, I've heard lots of things. I've heard that Emilio likes to drag his feet when it comes to paying the venue, and my guess is Super Kicked probably asked for money up front, which Emilio wasn't going to do because then how do you drag your feet
The Great
paying
Hall
money
is
after the
expensive.
fact?
It's a very expensive venue, and Superkip does an incredible job of filling that up every time in order to justify their costs. And I imagine they are justifying their costs, and that's an incredible feat. And more power to them, and so
And
do
I
the
mean,
fans.
if the cost up front was high, it's possible that Emilio just switched to Battle Arts just to keep his show running.
Perhaps because in
But
Battle Arts, everything is built in. You get the lighting, you get the ring. You don't have to rent the ring. It's a lot less headaches. It's a lot less moving parts. So I
so
get
we've
it.
covered that, and there's another show. We're still getting Rockpile bookings with CWO. They got the poster here. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Yeah,
Okay.
so we've got another show at the Rockpile, My Bloody Valentine, and is it is it February 19th? That's after
It
Valentine's. Or
says
no,
February
sorry, February
22nd.
22nd. What's that? Oh, 19 plus. Now I get it. Okay,
There you
so
go.
February 22nd, which is after Valentine's Day. But here's the poster. Then we got the one guy, the cadet. I know him. There's that Ali guy. I know him kind of. The that girl. That's Steve
She
Brown's
replied to a
manager, isn't
couple
it?
of our we showed a couple
That's
of her
right.
screenshots of
I don't know her, but I know her because
Samantha
I know she
Marshawa.
was active online when we were talking about the controversy. We
That's
got
right.
Tomer Shalom.
The Shalomer.
The guy above Shalom. I don't know who that is. Do you know who that is?
Michelangelo. So apparently he was active maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Okay.
And then he stopped indie wrestling. Now he's back. He's based out of Oshawa. He's recently been in China. In China, along with the Andrew Ruff, he did tour there, and now he back in the Canada. He's expressing interest in starting a wrestling school in Oshawa, which I think is a smart idea.
Oh, we got a new school. That's interesting.
Let's
And
see
what about
about
that
that.
to the right? Who's that?
I don't know. It almost looks like a
Well,
Bizarro Sin Bodhi or something. I don't know.
it I saw a video from the last show when they gigged poor Joe Thornington, and
Did
that
you
looks like
now?
the guy that did it,
Whoa.
but I
Okay.
don't know who it is.
Well, you're using
So
the word gigged. Isn't gigged when you sort of kayfabe and sort of make it look like something busted you open? So is
yeah,
gigged the
fair
right
enough. You're
word,
right.
Runyon?
I'm misusing that term. What happened was he took a fork and stabbed the ever loving crap out of Joe Thornington's face and forehead, and Joe bled everywhere. So I don't know. You're right. That's not gigging, but this happened
I
on the
don't even
last
think it was
show,
gigging when
and
I
you
put
know
this
what?
on my
It's
hand. I don't know
funny.
if you can
This
see
is
it.
My
I
Bloody Valentine,
yeah.
and I can't even imagine if they're advertising blood, what's going to possibly happen. Maybe the announcer's going to gig.
Dude, this is gonna be their best selling show, like draw wise. It's gonna be because of us. Like if you
Well,
like blood, I would suggest going to the show.
the,
If you like seeing people stabbed in the head with forks, but I would suggest checking this one out. As the poster, I mean, there's some to be desired there. It's not a bad poster. How would you grade this poster? Let us know in the comments what grade you would give this poster out of 10. What would you give it, Runyon?
um, a 4 out of 10.
4 to 10. All right, I'm gonna give it a 5. I say it's
That's
passable.
it's a
I
Bret
say it's
Hart
a
4 out of 10.
passable poster. There's a lot to be desired. Like that 19 plus, there's
Well,
a big ugly square around it. Um, the wrestlers, they're not like arranged in a sexy kind of way. They're just one, two, three,
they're
four,
just kind of placed
one,
in
two, three,
haphazardly.
four, five, six, seven, eight, nine freaking wrestlers. And the background, there's a lot to be desired. Too many fonts going on as well. Yeah, I
Did you
think there's a
see
lack of
our
focus,
good friend
lack of
Hardbody?
artistic vision. What about
Hardbody?
Hardbody? What
Do you see
or
him?
what about that kid? Is he there?
He's at the
Is he on the
bottom.
poster? Oh, I didn't even do. Okay, it goes down to a 4 now. My
Yeah.
rating
I
goes down to a 4.
I
I thought that was just another blood stain, but it might as well be another blood
well,
stain because that's all he is. We
it,
talked about brown stains. We're gonna talk about black stains, and we got another red stain here
oh jeez.
from this motherfucker's foreskin, probably.
But well, no. To be fair, I
Hilarious.
only noticed like af- after we brought this up and started talking. So like you weren't you don't have to feel silly for not seeing it. I blame the
They
poster.
should feel silly, dude. It
Yeah,
just
well, that's
looks
what I'm
like
saying.
another red stain. It looks like blood
Um,
flowing out of that mouth or whatever those splashes are.
and
That's bad.
we got
That's a 4.
some
You're right. It's a fucking 4. It's a
we
4.
got some weird lips thing coming in to kiss you for
Yeah,
wrestling.
some bloody lips. I get that. I can understand that. We get some bloody lips. Like there's a theme going
Yeah.
here. The QR code in red. All right. I can jive with some of this. but there's a lot to be desired. There's way too many people in the poster, especially ones that aren't interesting. You want to put the most interesting characters in the poster and feature them. It just feels like they're trying to make people happy. Like, do you really need the cadet on a poster when his finger is blocking his face and it just looks like a big black blob? Do you really need that?
That's
Like,
just a bad picture.
it's a bad. Why would you put a bad picture in a poster? That's the whole freaking point. You got Buddy pointing to his forehead, and showing his hand out there. If the dude, it's is he a guy who's only on there because he's selling tickets? If that's the case, give him his own poster to share
Oh,
on his own social media. Don't put him on the main poster. I don't know who the hell he is. He's wearing a regular T-shirt. That's lame as hell.
they seem to
Underneath
not
him, we've
sell
got
any
a
tickets to these shows.
well. If he sold 5, he's probably the top draw. Um,
Yeah.
then beneath him, you've got who is that? Asylum's tag partner, Matt Burns.
Matt Burns. Yeah, yeah.
He's almost doing the same pose. That's a pretty
He's
decent photo for the poster.
he's reaching
Tomer's
out for
got a
me.
vibe. The chicks look cool. Cut all these idiots. Michelangelo, they're covering up his physique. If I redid this poster, I'd take Michelangelo, I'd take Tomer, I'd take the chicks, I'd take Matt Burns, I'd blow them up big. I'd take Hardbody's photo with the blood, I'd blow him up big, fuck everybody else, and I'd hire somebody who knows how to use Photoshop, and then we'd bring it up at least to a 7 out of 10. What say you?
And maybe put a tantalizing fork like coming into the screen, so that like it's very clear where this
We're
is
gonna
gonna
go
go.
full Thornington, full Thornington. All right. Anyhow, that's enough about that.
Wait,
I
one more
think
point.
that was a free. That was a free seminar on posters.
Yeah, Steve Brown is missing. Do you find that suspicious?
Steve Brown, the illustrious Steve Brown from downtown Browntown, the taint pusher himself, is not here, but you can assume that he's going to be there because Davin has come to his defense and he hasn't seemed to have lost any of his main bookings, which are NSW, his own promotion, GCW, where he's the booker, and here at CWO.
And there's lots of people still willing to work for him. But it's interesting. There's no disclaimer on here telling the fans to be careful if Steve Brown is going to be there. That's interesting.
Absolutely. And one thing to consider is that this relates to what we're going to be talking about later. Because
Yes. So that's actually a good segue because I think we're ready to move on to the main event. What say you?
absolutely. In our first episode, which this relates to, we talked about a brown stain. We talked about accusations. We talked about an assault. We talked about lies. We talked about things being swept under the rug. We talked about facts and fallacies and things that were true and things that were lies, and most of them were true. But when it comes to this next story, you may want to take it with a grain of salt. You may want to take it with a handful of fries, but we're going to provide the next stain. And the next stain on Ontario Indie is truly a black one because it's much worse than a fan assault. It's much worse than a taint attack. This is an accusation of negligence that led to death, a wrongful death, a lawsuit that nobody's talking about. Isn't that right, Runyon?
Yeah, so there's a lawsuit, and I think we need to make it clear from the jump that we're only going to go through what's alleged and counters to what's alleged.
What's
We're
alleged,
not gonna,
what we know, and what we've experienced ourselves with these individuals, just like we have in any other times.
well, yeah, personal experience. If I was there, then or you were there, then
Or not even there, but I've wrestled. I've wrestled some of the individuals involved.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've been in the same room and I've been at the same events, and I can say some things that are potentially relevant. And I will speak about those. And who we're talking about, let's be explicit about it. And I'm going to leave that to you. I'm going to leave you. You're the host. So I'm going to hand the reins over to you, Runyon, and put it out for us explicitly about what we're dealing with here.
So we're going to pull up an article here and there
But
was an
before we do that,
article.
let's bring up a file photo. Let's let everybody know, so everybody knows exactly who we're talking about. Because what
So
we're going to delve into right now is Northland Wrestling, and it's Dan Jarrus.
yeah, so we it, a lot of the story centers around Dan Jarrus and what he was, how he allegedly conducted himself to train professional wrestlers. And so we got a photo here, and actually it's with the one star Caden Felix.
Now, I can see this photo you brought up, and it's very topical for the podcast. It's very relevant. You've got the diminutive Dan Jarrus there, fully fully marching away with a face mask. All right. You've got him holding a nice, big, long, thick kendo stick and chasing the one star, Caden Felix, running right after his tail, chasing his coattails, as I'm so familiar with. And in the background, you've got a rainbow flag flying. Well,
Everybody's included.
it's a great photo. It's very inclusive for those of various demographics and those who want to cover themselves up. But we don't need Dan Jarrus covered up right now. We need
So
him exposed, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's bring up a better photo.
here's a class photo of the wrestling school that's in the controversy. But yeah, so you can see the girl in question that was the victim, and a couple other
The
guys that we
alleged
know. Some of
victim.
these guys, the alleged well, no, she did. Well, she did die. We just don't know the cause.
Yeah, but was she the victim of Dan, is what I'm saying.
She was a victim of death.
She was,
um,
certainly. Let's bring up the next photo then. Let's get a better look at Dan Jarrus, whatever you want to call him. Let's get a better look at him. So pull that photo up right now, Runyon. All right. So here's Dan Jarrus. Get a good look at him. Get a good look at him, towering a few inches over a young girl.
well, here we go.
There
That's.
she is.
I mean, she's in the newspaper, so it's public.
And here we have Dan Jarrus and Lexi Mitchell. She's deceased. Rest in peace, Lexi Mitchell. We hope to shed some light on your story here. We hope to bring some justice if there is any to be found. We are here to talk about NRG Wrestling. We are here to talk about Northland Wrestling. We are here to talk about Dan Jarrus. And we are here to talk about Joshua Bain.
Yeah, so we got an article here that was on Sudbury.com. I don't know if this is just the website or the newspaper, but city councilor suing Canador, which is the academic institution that was associated with wrestling school over granddaughter's death. So
So
a
let's
North Bay
just
city councilor,
let's put
Lana
it out there
Mitchell.
first. Firstly, what we're looking at here is this young lady, Alexius Leduc Mitchell, passed away. And the accusation is that it's because of the actions and it's something that happened at NRG. And this young lady was the granddaughter of this North Bay counselor.
So there's
So
an article here with the story, and
we're going to
there's a
link to
girl that
that
died.
below.
We're gonna link to it below, but there's a girl that died, and there's a controversy over the cause of the death and who's responsible. It's a $3 million lawsuit, but who's the girl here that we're gonna take a look at?
The girl here we're
Alexis
taking a
Mitchell.
look at, Lexi Mitchell, as she was affectionately called. Um, let's find out a little bit more about her. It seems she was in her last year in college in the acting program. And as you can see here on her IMDb, she had a very promising career. If we scroll down, we can see that she was in a number of films. Four of them here. Um, even before she was enrolled in the, even as soon as she joined in the program, she was in a film there in 2020, Trickster. Then she had roles in 3 movies which were released after her death: Purgatory Jack in 2023, All the Lost Ones in 2024, and Zombie Town in 2023. And these were some, they're independent films, but they're pretty respectable films. I mean, Dan Aykroyd was featured in some of them, and some some decent production values, and she was doing quite well for herself even before graduating. It seems this was a young lady with a lot of promise, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, for sure. There's some, like, these movies look like they're pretty big budget, and I mean, Dan Aykroyd's obviously a big budget, so if you're involved with him, that's pretty successful.
And it
And
all came to an end, according to the accusations, with her involvement at the NRG Wrestling School associated with Northland Wrestling and Dan Jarrus. So let's get into
yes,
Dan Jarrus first of all. How about that?
yeah. So I can pull up the NRGY Wrestling School website, and
Energy
this is
Wrestling.
about NRGY. NRGY is a training institution owned and operated by longtime professional wrestler Dan Jarrus, founded in 2021 for the express purpose of training a new generation of wrestlers in Northern Ontario. And it's just some other stuff here, but it's I think according to the lawsuit, there was active recruit or alleged active recruitment from the wrestling school and the acting program to get actors or and actresses to come out and become professional wrestlers.
That's right. So the interesting thing about this is that not only is this a pro wrestling school, which there are many of those throughout Ontario, but most of the wrestling schools you'll come across in Ontario aren't associated with a college. And they generally attract people who are very interested in pro wrestling, who are very obsessed with pro wrestling. Like, I can speak for myself. When I first joined at Squared Circle Training, I Googled um, pro wrestling training near Toronto, and that's what came up. And when I joined, they put me through the ringer. They made me earn my stripes, but I sort of knew what I was getting into. They weren't recruiting. And even when I had my own wrestling school, I was sort of against recruiting. I mean, you talk about Hulk Hogan. Do you remember the story about Hulk Hogan when he first tried to join pro wrestling, Runyon?
Oh yeah, it was a rough go for Hulk Hogan.
He joined the school, and the trainer there in the dojo deliberately broke his leg. Hiro Matsuda broke Hulk Hogan's leg, and then Hulk Hogan came back for more. But I tend to think they weren't actively recruiting, were they, Runyon?
Well, the old wrestling culture was to keep people out.
That's right.
So the story for with Hulk Hogan seems to add up, where it's like they wouldn't want to train him, but their mentality would be that if they hurt him and he keeps coming back, then there's like,
Then he
okay, we
wants it.
can
There's
we
something
can
there.
then accept him. Yeah.
But they didn't have a
And
website saying they're inclusive and they're gonna make everyone a part and have a place in pro wrestling, did they, Runyon? In
well, they
1970,
probably didn't have a
whatever.
website at all in the 80s or the 70s.
Exactly.
Um,
It was kayfabe. It was protected. They were protecting the business. They weren't saying it's all inclusive and anybody can do it, and you can do it too. Which that what we read there in the website says that, doesn't it? And that's sort of incongruent for some of the things I've heard about NRGY, energy. I don't know how you say it. I'm going to call it energy for the sake of um
I think it's Energy Y in a reference to DDP's yoga.
perhaps because he's involved with that. Let's bring that up as well. So you can see Dan Jarrus, he's a DDP yoga practitioner, instructor, and everything else. He's involved with that. But DDPY, NRGY. So NRGY, you've got NRGY inclusive. DDPY inclusive, but we've heard some from some students who've gone to this school who brought their families there with them. They weren't willing to necessarily provide their names and identities, but we were told that these individuals were shamed, were discouraged when they brought their family members to watch them train. Now, what do you think about that, Runyon?
Well, I know I've worked for Northland a couple of times,
So have I,
and Dan Jarris, it seems like a guy that runs a tight ship, kind of a no nonsense kind of guy.
in a
And
sense,
it that story lines up, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I
indeed.
could see him wanting
But the
to.
question is, why wouldn't he want people viewing the class who weren't involved if by being involved in an acting program at Canadore College, aren't they admitting that pro wrestling is fake and a work and acting? And if so, what is the problem with individuals bringing their family to cast? I've been in classes at Battle Arts. I've been in classes at Squared Circle Training. I've been at classes in China. I've led classes in China and all over the world. And it's always been in this day and age in pro wrestling, that's always been welcomed. It's always been encouraged. And why else would you shame and discourage someone bringing their family to training if that wasn't the case? If you were trying to kayfabe, to me, that would be the only reason you do that. If you were sort of some old school mentality to discourage people, but the fact that they're involved with Canadore College speaks against that.
And
No,
I think it just in reading through the public documents that came out with the lawsuit, there's definitely an alleged, well, there's a claim that allegedly the college is to be held liable because they were involved with the recruitment of a to a wrestling program that wasn't properly run or stay unsafe, etc.
and to me, that stands to reason because one thing to have a pro wrestling school where, as it says here, to book a tryout, having a tryout is one thing, but having an involvement, we don't know the extent of the involvement with Canadore College and Joshua Bain's involvement, who apparently was a student there, but at the same time, he was a professor or a teacher at the college. So it sort of blurs the lines as to power and where he stands on that totem pole, doesn't it?
So this Joshua Bainbridge guy, um, he was a professor at the college,
Seems he
and
still is.
it yes, and he's named in the lawsuit. He actually came out and denied the recruitment, and which,
And to
like, to
be clear,
me,
we have all the court files, and we're gonna link them in the below in the video. We're gonna link to you all the
we're gonna link them
PDFs.
below, and I mean we'll even we'll post what we're looking at, and you should be able to see it here.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And but
We have all the court
Bainbridge
documents.
Bainbridge has explicitly denied recruitment, which I guess kind of has him pinning the responsibility on Dan.
Yeah. So we at this stage we don't know the extent to which the relationship between NRGY and the Canaccord College, um we don't know the extent to which that relationship blossomed to or what exactly it was, but it if it the accusations are true and they were recruiting through the college, it shows that Bainbridge would have some authority, you would think, in this situation. There's Bainbridge, who's with the college, who's recruiting people for this wrestling, and then there's Dan's involvement, who's involved with the wrestling. So they both have some power, they both have some authority, if that is true. No,
Well, so this is a little bit more in depth with his statement. So he denies any involvement with recruiting for Northland Wrestling or NRGY
uh-huh.
Professional Wrestling, and specifically denied recruiting this girl Lexi. But he also categorizes himself as a student. Simply, it says, quote, simply a student, which I guess he's referring directly to the wrestling program because he's a
Right.
professor at the college, which doesn't have a professional wrestling program. So
Indeed.
I guess he's trying to say that he wasn't, I guess, a part of the administration of this wrestling program.
But a question to ask is, if this professional wrestling program is directly involved with the overarching umbrella of the acting program at the college, wouldn't that imply that he has authority over the wrestling program? I suppose that's the question that really needs to be asked, because that would mean, I would think, that he is not necessarily simply a student. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I'm viewing it from where I sit. What say you?
I mean, I think they'll have to piece through with the judicial system because
Indeed. I'm just asking
we're
questions here,
we're
obviously,
just
as we
asking
always do.
questions, which obviously will they'll have to investigate and etc. But I guess that's a question that we probably don't have the answer to right now. We'll just have to wait and see what the courts decide. The defense pleads that if harm occurred, responsibility may rest partly on or wholly elsewhere, including with Lexi herself. So I guess the defense is arguing that this girl, and she was of legal age, and that she would have had a certain amount of onus of responsibility on how or what she participated in and the risks involved. What say you?
Well, that's certainly true, but we don't know the extenuating circumstances. We don't know. We don't have a copy of if if even there were any waivers signed or what she was told in regards to the potential dangers. We don't know whether there was insurance involved here at all, and I think those might play a factor. What say you, Runyon?
Well, I think this is what makes this story so interesting because I feel like the, I guess, policing or regulation of professional wrestling schools is basically non-existent. And what the courts are going to have to decide, well, I guess because you're in an acting program, and are you participating in acting through professional wrestling, or is professional wrestling a sport?
Well, let's
Or
be clear about one thing. This wasn't necessarily part of the acting program. The accusations were that they
well, it's
are
alleged, yeah.
recruiting. It's alleged that they're recruiting. And I want to point to you to a quote from an article with Dan Jarrus where I interviewed him and I wrote it. So let's pull that up.
So we got the article here behind the gimmick table, and
Written
we're
by
gonna
the
just read through.
illustrious wrestling merch machine. And we've got an interesting
Oh yeah.
quote here that's going to shed some light on the experience of Dan Jarrus and his mentality when it comes to wrestling training and the precedent that was set for him. And maybe he's applying it now. We don't know. But let's have a look at it here. There's a direct quote from him in this article. He reveals here in this article that he joined the
Well,
Hart
actually,
Brothers,
Dan Jarrus's real name is Dan Pagozzo.
and not to be accused with the another Dan Pagozzo accused of some sex crimes in the northern
Oh
region of
yeah, we don't.
Ontario.
If you Google this, don't get confused. There's two Dan Pagozzos
There's a lot of
in
Dan
North
Pagozzo's a lot
North
of
Bay too.
accusations up in northern Ontario, but this particular one is not the sex criminal. This one is the one with we're discussing now. So he went and joined the at 27 years old, which is pretty late for a pro wrestler, isn't it?
It's later than most.
Later than most. So he joined the wrestling school only with the intention of pursuing a backstage role. He went to the Hart Brothers School in Cambridge, owned by Joe Frockledge, also known as Ike Shaw. And the Ike Shaw there expressed disbelief in Pagozzo's desire just to work in the office, and he insisted on training him. In hindsight, Pagozzo believes, and I quote, he saw $3,000 walking through the door.
And I think what this speaks to is a common theme you see with wrestling schools, where the idea is just to tr-
Monetize.
well, yeah, you want to you monetize the program where it's like it's not about just teaching people wrestling, it's about prolonging that experience and getting and it's really not uncommon to ask people to pay thousands of dollars up front to receive wrestling training. So
Because
in this
obviously, pro wrestling is a highly specialized thing. Is that fair to say?
well,
It's
it's
not for
very hard to
it's not
find
for
it
everybody.
find how to
It's
learn it.
highly specialized, and here we see that it's very expensive. And in his diminutive stature of a 5'6", as he states, it's highly unlikely for such an individual to have a successful pro wrestling career, but it is possible. And I think it's fair to say, especially considering what I've heard about Ike Shaw, that he did see $3,000 walking through the door. What say you, Runyon?
I don't know Ike Shaw, so I can't really
I
comment
don't
on
know
that.
either. I don't know him
But
either. I've heard stories.
it's definitely part of the culture to want to
Yes.
monetize a wrestling school. That's for sure. And I mean, I think both of us can
And
attest to
is
that.
perhaps we're casting questions to catch the truth. Is it perhaps possible that to this day, Dan Pagozo is running shows and participating in pro wrestling to gain that $3,000 back? Because what say
Well, the
you?
interesting thing there was also some rumor and innuendo that the biggest thing with the wrestling school was he would train these wrestlers and then not pay them to do the shows, which means he's just
And
pocketing the
that's the
gate.
case with a lot of schools, right?
Of
Like
course.
that's part of paying your dues, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But
Well,
what isn't congruent here to me is the one aspect of a pro wrestling school and paying your dues, and the other aspect of recruitment, because those two things don't jive to me. There's recruitment, and then there's making people pay their dues. And if you're recruiting them, you shouldn't be making them fight hard and pay their dues and work from underneath and be grateful for this. And if that's the case, if he calls himself the old dog, and if he's old school as an old dog might be, then I don't think there's a place for that type of mentality in a recruitment program in an acting school.
well, I think yes, that's exactly it. Because I can speak to this because I've got into movies recently and stunt acting and such, and acting in the film industry and being a worker in that industry is totally different than the wrestling industry. And
Right.
there's a lot of like standards and protocols that are followed by the acting industry that aren't followed in the wrestling industry. Like
Absolutely.
being asked like being asked to work for free is, I mean, I guess there's cases of that too in acting, but
Well, I'm
I
sure there's
think
volunteering.
there's definitely guidelines around the amount of physicality that's involved with acting, because there's
Sure.
definitely way more liability involved. So if there's an affiliation with wrestling and the acting program, I would think those are incongruent, because like when you're on a set and you're like there has to be zero possibility of any kind of injury, and the lengths that they go to ensure this are really really extensive, and rightfully so. But that I
And
don't
you've
think
been on
that's really
set.
followed in the wrestling industry.
We've been on the same sets. We've been on set of Dark Side of the Ring, where we've done a lot of work for them. I've been on set at Murdoch Mysteries, where I've done the wrestling choreography for them. And the protocols that they follow are so detailed and so specific, and they make sure there's no possible room for injury. And you would think that for an acting program to involve students into pro wrestling and actively recruit them, as is alleged, you would think that that would be consistent with that. But in pro wrestling, it's a lot more like training for martial art and than it is for acting, I would say, which leaves a lot more room for unpredictableness and injury. Is that fair to say, Runyon?
Well, I think I would find it hard to believe that a wrestling program would run incongruent with an acting program in terms of having the same standards and safety involved. Does that sound fair?
Can you rephrase that? I'm not sure what you mean.
Like the wrestling program wouldn't follow the same safety guidelines and the same standards of workplace environment and like just general safety that would be
Well,
followed
I
on a
would
film
say
set.
that, but I would say if this program was associated with a college, it would. No?
Well, but that's exactly my point. I would find it hard to believe that the wrestling program would follow that. However, we
I
don't
guess
know,
what
and it's
our
up to the
points
courts to
are that
decide.
in all those places, especially, and I learned this in Japan when I was recruited as a trainee in Japan. I didn't interview them; they interviewed me. I didn't ask them the questions; they asked me the questions, and that's what I did every time I've been a pro wrestling coach. I looked at the individual, and I assessed them. Do they want to truly be a pro wrestler? Do they want to main event WrestleMania? Do they want to be a hobbyist? Can they get through my basic physical assessment regime? And it was not inclusive in that sense. And I mean, it was inclusive in the sense that if they wanted to be a hobbyist, I had room for hobbyists. I had room for people who just wanted to get in shape and not be pro wrestlers and do it by pro wrestling training. But I assessed them. I didn't recruit them. I discouraged them from pursuing it as a professional so that we could have the best class we could and do the best for them. Does that make sense, Runyon?
Yeah, and I think this will be a big question for the court case in the sense because this process of active recruitment seems to be a crux of the plaintiff.
Because that's what's alleged. And if that's true, it paints a very different picture than
Right.
what would be otherwise.
And I guess the point we're trying to hammer home here is that the culture of going through wrestling training seems to be that it's very exclusive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look here. We've talked about Dan Jarris. Now let's take a look at Dan Jarris's t-shirt here. Dan Jarris, able or likely to cause harm or injury. Isn't that interesting, Runyon?
Well, this is his wrestling T-shirt, right? So I get what
Obviously.
we're gonna have to come down to with this lawsuit, which to me is what makes it so interesting, is draw where do you draw the line between work and shoot, right?
And this sort of
So
illustrates this. I mean, it's almost comedic in a sense to look at this, and it's ironic or coincidental, however way you want to look at it. But it says that about Dan Jarris on his T-shirt. But when it comes to Dan Jarris and his qualifications to be a wrestling coach, it's funny how that might apply, isn't it?
well, you could say that there's a lot of wrestling gimmicks that are just an extension of the actual person,
Sure.
and we talked a bit about our experiences with Dan, and he is very much a kind of no nonsense kind of guy.
I want to
So
tell you an interesting story about Dan Jarris. I was at a show with him in pretty far up north, and there was an incident, incidentally enough, with him and Joshua Bain. Joshua Bain, he was getting a lot of heat. He was doing a good job getting heat, being a heel. And a certain fan during Joshua, I don't know if it was his entrance or during the match, a fan stood up, a fan who I'd spoken to earlier because I was working the merch table. I wasn't booked that evening. And I got to know this fan. And this fan, he was a tall fellow. He was taller than me. He weighed about, I would say, in excess of 250 pounds. And this fan was mentally handicapped, definitely. And he was a big fan and very enthusiastic to be at the event. And he was so wrapped up in the event that he actually attacked and laid hands on Josh Bain.
Mhm.
And out of everybody in that locker room, of that CWE locker room, there were many people there. There were many people who witnessed this, and I'll give Dan his props. Only Dan and I stepped forth to separate this individual from Joshua Bain. And Dan took the extra effort to eject this fan from the show. I don't think that was necessary, but the very interesting thing to me was that afterwards, when we debriefed on the subject, Dan Jarrus expressed that he wished that the fan laid hands on him so that he could lay hands on the fan. And he gave the fan a very negative experience, and I think he potentially killed a fan's fandom. And to me, that's not conducive to a pro wrestler encouraging a fan's fandom and making money. And I don't understand that mentality as a pro wrestler.
So that's a good segue into more of our debrief, because there actually was an incident at a Northland show with a fan, and I'm gonna pull
Absolutely.
up the footage here, and this is Nick Asylum against uh, Santana, and you can see they come very close to the fans with the wrestling outside the ring. But if we just go forward a little bit,
So they're actually, as they're doing this fighting on the outside, they're physically knocking into fans. You can see that it's probably happening
yeah, for sure.
on
But
that dive, on
and
that
then
double boot,
they're
and
insisting
then
that
here even more so.
here you can see there was definitely an incident here. It's hard to see, but you can see in the background. You can see a fan in right here. If we can circle it, that he actively swings his cane at Nick.
So after Nick is whipped into the chairs by his opponent here, there's a fan who stands up and waves his cane and utters profanity from what we can hear, and he actually leaves. Is expressing displeasure with what happened, and it seems he was hit by Nick Asylum. No,
Well, it seems like that in the video, but
yeah.
also like there was number of witnesses there that confirmed what happened, that there was some contact made, and the fan was very displeased with it.
And the fan was related to the show, weren't they, Runyon?
Yeah, so actually it turns out that this was Jimmy Spite's grandfather, and I don't know for sure, but shortly after that, Jimmy Spite put out a statement that he was leaving the wrestling industry.
Yeah. So we'll show
And
that statement here on the
I have
screen
this
here.
statement. I can read it
Jimmy
here, but
Spite,
we can pull it
he
up on the
came
screen
back
too.
eventually, but it didn't last long. And it seemed like this ended his experience in pro wrestling. And it seems that NRGY and Northland Wrestling shows aren't strangers to fan interactions that are pretty negative.
Yeah, so here's the statement here, and I mean you can read it for yourself, but we're gonna just riff on it. And so it says, "I'll no longer be doing any pro wrestling, and this is not a decision I made lightly, regardless of my ability of talent level. The one thing I will say is that I will always put my full self in every aspect of this, and don't feel like I can or should any longer, and this is non-negotiable." He says, "There have been major issues in my life, inside and out of wrestling. They have built up to this over a period of time," and he puts brackets financial and availability. So financial is interesting. What say you?
I mean, obviously he put some money into training. He must have seen that they saw some value in him because after this is the main event spot, and he came out with a pipe to chase the heels off. So he saw that they saw they had some value in him, but then if what happened that's alleged is true, they didn't see enough value in him to validate the wrong that was done to his family member. Does that track,
Well, yeah.
Ryan?
So it goes on in this statement. I think with the financials, it seems to confirm this culture that we talked about, where these wrestling schools look to monetize the program more than to just run the actual program.
I mean, we can't
So
really assume
it's
exactly what was going on, but I don't see a problem with
well,
wrestling schools training a wrestler and then having them work for
this
free for a couple of years or any time as a home base promotion.
but this statement would indicate that the financial burden on him was arduous. Indicate,
Sure.
allegedly. Of course, we don't know for
Uh
sure
huh.
because we're not speaking
We
for him.
don't.
But and then
Absolutely.
also there's uh it goes on to say, I have to protect myself, my personal well-being, and mental health, and apparently now even my members of my own family, as someone close to me was injured during a very irresponsible and preventable spot in a
Bingo.
match. So that confirms what we showed in the video, and it goes on to say that no accountability was taken, which is interesting.
Right.
So essentially, it happened, and no one really seemed to want to take responsibility for it.
Which is interesting, and it's not so interesting because on Northland wrestling shows, I've never seen so many shows where injuries are so common and just so commonplace and just swept under the rug and just accepted as a part of pro wrestling. Usually injuries are a big deal, but Dan Jarrett seems to. I've never met a wrestler who gets injured like his ratio, let's put it this way, of wrestling to injuries is higher than anyone I've ever seen. He wrestles and he gets injured, and it, on the one hand, maybe it's a storyline that he's making himself injured so he can fight from underneath and fight from the injury, but it happens so often that it's meaningless. And if it is a work, then it's meaningless. But if it's not a work, it proves that he's a shitty wrestler and a shitty trainer because he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing and he gets injured. So in either option of the dichotomy, it's a bad option. What say you, Ryan?
Well, yeah. So we've got some more screenshots here. So in February of 2018, it says that Dan Jarrett suffered a serious knee injury, and this is on the Northland Wrestling Facebook. And further to that, we have in August of 2018, looks like Dan underwent some
So
surgery.
you never know with pro wrestling. It could be a work that he's doing this. But if
Of
it's
course.
not, I mean, on the one hand, it's stupid either way. It's stupid if it's a work because he has so many injuries. It means that he's the most injury prone wrestler in the world. And if it if it's a shoot, it means that I mean either way he's the most injury prone wrestler in the world. On the one hand, he's booking himself in that position. On the other hand, it's that he's actually shitty. Like it's
So
just a
there's
no
another
win
post here,
situation. What say to you?
July 2023. It says Dan Jarrett required 26 staples to close up a head wound.
And we have a photo
And
of those stables, don't we?
yes, we do.
So
That's where we would
somebody
cut it.
who gets injured so often wrestling, isn't that something Can Core College should look into to see if they're worthy of training people in an acting program, especially when acting is supposed to be acting and not real? And here's the guy who's breaking legs, who's bleeding. To me, it seems incongruent. You can let us know in the comments. You can decide for yourselves.
Well, and I mean, like, again, because I've worked on a number of movies, and so have you. Like, those kinds of things wouldn't happen on a movie set, or at the
Absolutely
very
not.
least, it's very rare. And it seems like we have a theme here with this wrestler where he it
And he's
continues
the
to,
coach, and he's the coach, and he's injured
and he's
more than
also in
anybody
charge
else.
of instructing the safety of the wrestlers, and you can see you have some palm prints here. Well, I think the thing is, if you're working in the professional wrestling industry, the whole point is to make it look real, but not actually have it be real.
All right. Absolutely.
So if you're having incidents where you have to get staples in your head or you blow your knee out, which of
Mhm.
course accidents happen,
Sure.
but they should be few and far between. Does that make sense? And like
Indeed,
I don't
absolutely. And
I don't
again, the
know how
ratio
much.
of his injuries to his matches are higher than
Well,
anyone I've
this is what I
ever
was gonna
seen.
say. I don't know how many matches he has on a regular basis, but he seems to have a lot of injuries that occur.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna go back to these court documents, and we talked about Josh Bainbridge. We talked
And I want
about
to, oh, sorry,
Canadore
hold on. I
College.
want to make a point about his training and the way he presents himself. Because when it comes to this and when it comes to his injuries, we've seen it to some degree with the way he presents his knee injuries, his leg injuries, and posting these selfies and these photos on Facebook to perhaps gain sympathy. I don't know. But he also does it with chops. Isn't that interesting, Ron?
Well, it's I guess he likes to lay it in.
But it's not him laying it in, isn't it? He's boasting the fact that his
Someone
chest
else
in
is laying
these
it in. That's
photos
right.
has been laying it in and turning his chest into a slab of raw ground beef. And a lot of wrestlers like myself, like the most illustrious, famous Canadian pro wrestler, Bret the Hitman Hart, we don't take kindly, we don't take well to this type of activity in terms of chops and chopping chests and chopping meat like this. What say you?
Yeah, and like
It
I'm all
seems
for
like
laying it
Dan in
in.
these photos is taking pride in the fact that his chest has been turned into raw meat. And isn't
Yeah,
the point
he
of pro wrestling to create an illusion? It's almost like a form of mentalism. It's almost like a form of magic. You're making the audience believe in the violence, but you're not actually doing it. But he's glorifying this violence on himself, isn't he, in these
it would
photos?
appear based off these public posts that he likes to show that the physical damage that is occurring to his body.
But isn't that incongruent in being part of the drama program in a college where it's
Oh,
you're
definitely. Like as a stunt worker, I wouldn't show off the injuries I've made as a stuntman because that would mean I'm not a good stuntman.
that bastardizes the point you're proving in that this program should be part of an acting program. Having slap marks with bruises and blood vessels being broken and every other sort of injury that we're showing in these photos, that proves that this isn't acting. And why should it be part of an acting program? And the college should have looked at this in more detail, and it just doesn't add up, does it?
Yeah, so I think we've covered the claims of the plaintiff. We've covered some statements by Josh Bainbridge and his role, and we've covered the alleged role of Canadore College. So, more in this document is that Dan is pleaded and or claimed or alleged as the owner operator of the wrestling school,
And he's
and it
representing
says,
himself as well.
well, yeah, that's another important point. He's representing himself, and it says together individually, the defendants Pagozo and Bainbridge own, operate, and actively promote a commercial professional wrestling business known as Northland Wrestling at all material times through Northland, NRGY, and BT Holdings. Did we find out what BT Holding is?
Not sure about that, but here
We'll have to
apparently
look into
it's
that.
suggesting that BT Holdings involves both Dan and Bainbridge. That's something to look
But
into. But if
and
that's
it
the
says
case, then they're both involved.
ran a for-profit professional wrestling school. So that's an interesting claim because it runs in line with the financial burden that Joshua Spite was talking about.
Absolutely. And considering all this, there's something else I want to bring into the equation here, Runyon, which we've got a lot of accusations here for Joshua Bain. We've got a lot of accusations here for Dan Pagozzo, for Dan Jarris. And the question that really arises, as unfortunate as this whole situation is, and as alleged as it is, and I hope it's true that Joshua Bainbridge and the Dan Pagozzo are not guilty and they didn't have any liability. But the question to me remains, why was Ontario Indie Wrestling so quiet about this when they've been so loud about other things? They've been loud about Mike Clark's accusations about things that happened at the rock pile. They've been so loud at defending Steve Brown, who we had definitive video proof evidence about in terms of his alleged assault at the rock pile. They've been so loud about me. And people have contacted venues that I've been booked for to tell them that I shared memes. People like, you want to go more farther up in wrestling. People have like Michael Elgin, people like Marty Scurll, who didn't even commit a crime, but something that might have been a crime in another country being canceled. People like at the top of the totem pole, Vince McMahon, being accused of things that he has not been proven guilty of. He's been canceled. He's been fired. He's been excommunicated from WWE. And yet here we have a wrongful death. We're talking about life and death. And here Dan Pagozzo, here Northland Wrestling is still booking, is still running, is still wrestling for other promotions. And this is a much more serious accusation than anything I've named. And the silence and the double standard speaks volumes about Ontario Indie Wrestling, about everyone involved, about power and responsibility, and about politics. So I want to point out everyone that's working for Dan Pagozzo right now. I want to point out all of his students who have kept this quiet, because a lot of these students have spoken out about some of these other issues. Why aren't you speaking about this? Why isn't anyone in Ontario speaking on this when we're talking about a death that is still an accusation, but still a possibility?
Well, I think, yeah, it's the guilty until proven innocent mindset that society seems to have today. What this is what I was going to say. It's always a pick and choose between who is held to this standard and who's not. Like this incident occurred at the end of 2022, and I know Northland's been running pretty consistently for the
Consistently
last
since then.
year and so. Yeah, for sure. But Dave Wildstar booking him is interesting because he's also the guy that employs Steve Brown as his head booker, and Steve Brown assaults fans.
And the fans don't say shit about any of that. They argue with us, even though we showed the footage, but we weren't there. We weren't there
That's
at
right.
this instance either. And neither was anybody else, apparently. And who was in that class, I don't know. Was it the Digglers who were there? Joshua Bain was definitely there. Who was in that class? Who is working for Northland Wrestling that knows about this? And if you didn't, now that you know, are you going to keep working for them? That's the real question. Are you going to be consistent in your cancellation, in your white knighting? Is that what you're going to do? Or are you going to get what you can get out of Dan Pagozzo?
And actually, it's worth noting. Probably now it's timely, is that the next show was actually canceled. not because of public outcry, but because apparently there was an issue with the venue. At least that's what the post says. And so this actually says about what the final decision will be made tomorrow, but it was definitely canceled.
But let's make sure everybody knows. Everybody knows and everybody listens. Let's make it very explicit as we like to do here. And let's give everybody the information so that they can decide for themselves. Because I'm going to tell you right now, at this stage, if Dan Pagozo booked me to be on that Northland show, I'd go. Because I believe in innocent until proven guilty. But let's see if everybody else feels that way. I've been on shows at PWE, Pro Wrestling Clips, where I was asked, would you be okay working on a show with Michael Elgin? I was told that I was the only individual that was that said they would. To me, that speaks to the fact that they're envious of Michael Elgin's popularity and they're willing to dogpile to elevate themselves.
So we've got the poster here of the next show. The show was canceled, but this was the poster before it was canceled. And if you pull it up, you can see
So let's
who's
take a
on it
look at
here.
all these individuals and at everyone involved.
It's definitely interesting, and even the point that I mean, I'm involved with this area and the people, and I didn't really hear much about it until 10 days after the article came out. Well, I think we'll have to wait and see what happens with
We
the judicial
definitely will.
process, and I think we'll keep everybody posted
And we're
because
going to keep
Cass
a
is Cass
close
can
eye on it.
is gonna Cass can is gonna keep going, and we'll keep everybody updated. And but if you want to like and comment what your thoughts are, thumbs up, subscribe, and we will catch